Hi, everybody. Just getting a few things started here. All right, 1 second. Okay. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. This is Dr. Deepa Patani, and I am here today. We're live in our group as well on Facebook. So if you're here watching us on YouTube, or if you are not part of our Facebook group yet, it's a private Facebook group called Pre-Healing Autoimmune and Healing Autoimmune Conditions Naturally. So please look for that. We have a really wonderful community where we are able to discuss autoimmune issues, and there are lots of precursors that are kind of the building blocks for when we would see autoimmune symptoms. So we are trying to be proactive about that, and we're trying to see what those markers may be and how we can help our clients and other people that may be just out there looking for information, and what you can be looking for to address like what those autoimmune issues may be, and how to look for those markers, and how we can kind of work towards that so that we don't wind up with an autoimmune disorder. So if you are new to this, then you know or may not know, but autoimmune diseases are on the rise, and it doesn't stop at just one autoimmune condition. Most people that have any kind of diagnosis for an autoimmune condition have, as the years go by, been diagnosed with 2 and 3 autoimmune issues. And the reason for that is there's something in our body that is triggering that inflammatory process, and it's up to us to figure out what that inflammatory conditions are, which can be different for different people, as we are all different. And what works for one person may not work for the other person. So we just have to be mindful of what those inflammatory markers are for our bodies. And until we find that, that inflammation is not going away, and then it leads to one diagnosis. Sometimes starts with maybe rheumatoid arthritis, or it can start with Hashimoto's with pregnancy. But those are some indicators of what's causing autoimmune conditions for people. And so once we kind of know what those inflammatory markers are, we can try to reverse some of those things, and try to help our bodies not get more and more different autoimmune diagnoses on top of that. So today we're talking about that's just a little bit of a gist of what autoimmune conditions are, but and what we're trying to do here. But today's topic is excitotoxins. So what that is, it's not as exciting because the name is kind of deceiving. It says excitotoxins, but they're actually just chemical substances that overstimulate our all the processes in our body. So whether they're overstimulating the types of cells that are in our brain, it's overstimulating our nervous system, it's overstimulating our immune system. So these are they're all kind of bunched together into this name called excitotoxins. And in higher levels, what happens is that these cells can become damaged, and then they start to die. And then our inflammatory processes kick in to try to get rid of these cells that have been damaged. And in that, it creates that autoimmune response that we a lot of times see in patients that have autoimmune diseases. So the underlying mechanism of how these excitotoxins work is that, like, because there's something that's triggering it, and then it causes the neurons to overfire and overstimulates all the different bodily systems. And so you will see this damage and these types of cells and conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and MS, autism, even Huntington's disease, right? And they've also been found. So those are some of the like the more harmful things that and maybe a little more rare than the other things. But in order to be able to relate to more people, it can also cause like diabetes, and it can cause migraines, and atherosclerosis. And it's also something that happens when people pass away very suddenly from heart attacks and things like that, which we're seeing and hearing of more and more these days. So it's not just a disease of this rare condition that happens once in a while. It's something that we do know, or we're either experiencing it ourselves, or we do know people that are kind of going through similar symptoms. Even eye diseases, how tumors grow, how cancers spread, things like that. So this is all led by those inflammatory markers that kind of throw our regular functioning of the body into like this haywire cycle. And so the most common excitotoxin that we can talk about today is called glutamate. And glutamate is the main component in MSG. So this is why when we're eating processed foods and things, we need to be uh, aware of what those ingredients are in our processed foods. Just a second. I don't know what happened to the lights here. There we go. So that's why it's very important, like when we're eating some of these processed foods, that we're familiar with what those contents are in our foods. And MSG is one of the main components in processed food, and it's more commonly seen in things like potato chips and flavored crackers. Can be in dried soups, dried meats. It can be in what do you call it? Also, surprisingly, in salad dressings, cured meats, and soy sauces, diet foods, right? So we think that we're eating healthier foods, but these diet foods have also been um, kind of tainted with this MSG. And cured meats and poultry, which is injected with broth. But the reading the labels doesn't always help because it's not always listed on these labels. So when a food is about 99% pure MSG, it is called monosodium glutamate by the FDA, and it must be labeled. But a lot of times, not all the food will have 99% of MSG, right? They may have like smaller quantities of it, so then they don't have to report it, and then it's not even in our labels that we're trying to read and trying to be aware of. So then how do we kind of get around that, right? Like, how do we find out what foods we're eating, if they have MSG, if they have trace amounts of MSG, what's going on? So if there's anything less than 99% of MSG, then the FDA does not require that the manufacturer put that on the label. So it often appears in the label in forms such as, you may see things like hydrolyzed vegetable protein, and you may see spices, and you can see natural flavoring. So when you see any of these, like, you can pretty much know that there are some questionable ingredients in there that are not all being listed. And that's a great way to kind of hide some of the ingredients that you don't really want to talk about or disclose to the general public of what is in the actual item. So once again, I'm going to repeat those three things that you may see on the labels, and they may be hydrolyzed vegetable protein, spices, or natural flavoring. So those are the three things that we want to be looking for. And ingredients that may have, so remember we said only 99% and up have to report that MSG is in the food. So ingredients that can have 30 to 60% MSG, again, hydrolyzed vegetable protein, hydrolyzed plant protein, sodium caseinate, yeast extract, textured protein, autolyzed yeast, and hydrolyzed oat flour. So right now, right, if you're looking at, that's why it was important to mention the diet foods before, because right now there's so much hype about gluten and not wanting to eat gluten and trying to be healthy and increasing our protein intake. But then if we're adding things like textured protein, and if we're adding things like the hydrolyzed oat flour, right, so we feel that we're doing the right thing, and we feel that we're adding all these healthy alternatives to our diets. But if we're not careful of what to look for and what those different things on those labels mean, then we can also be making inadvertently adding these toxins into our diet. And it's a reason why we don't always see a change in our symptoms. And we feel that I'm doing everything correctly, and I'm eating right, I'm doing this, I'm being healthy, and I still don't see a change. I'm not losing the weight, or my hormones are still not balanced, and my diabetes is getting worse, or my migraines are getting worse. So this is the reason, because there's so many disguised things that we see or don't see, which are leading to those symptoms. There's a few things that have about 12 to 40% MSG, and that's things like, bouillon, broth, stock, uh, natural beef or chicken flavoring, seasoning, and again, spices. So when you say, when we think that, and I know for myself as well, when we had a lot of patients that were recovering from, COVID, or they feel fatigued, and they've been battling some kind of viral disease for a while, and you kind of just feel drained. I myself have recommended, bone broth, chicken broth, to my patients and my clients to help them gain their strength back and to help their bodies heal. But a lot of times, right? How many times do we start making that broth at home? Not very often. Do we start making all these things at home and making sure what ingredients are going in there and so on and so forth. A lot of times we're just, okay, well, I'm just going to add the stock to my cart and, do the rest and still buy process. So we have to be very mindful of those things, me included, because I'm definitely um, part of this. Until like recently, even I didn't also realize that, okay, well, there's so much sodium in these things, and there's so much disguised ingredients in there that we may not be aware of. Ingredients that contain some MSG are carrageenan, enzymes, some soy milk, and whey protein concentrate. So again, we just have to like be mindful about these items that we may be including in our thing, and you don't have to worry about writing these down. I'm going to get this article together, and it will be posted on my website, drdeepapatani.com, and you'll be able to download or get a copy of this article from there. Just give me a day and I should have it up there. But so I don't want you to think that, glutamate, like we're talking about MSG being bad, but the main issue was with glutamate. But glutamate is also one of the more important things that we need in our lives, right? It's not something that we can do without. It acts as a neurotransmitter. It helps with everything working well in our digestive system, and for us to it it stimulates the gut movement, so everything kind of moves along in our stomach. It regulates the inflammatory process. It produces the antioxidant glutathione. So glutamate is important in our body. So how do we know, right? How do we know how much is enough? How do we know what we have in our bodies is enough? How do we know, are we in toxic ranges? So there is a test that can be done for that. And it's called, it's just specifically to test for glutamate toxicity. And sometimes it can get pricey. It's not always covered by insurance. But if you didn't want to do the test and find out, there's also ways like the ingredients that we just talked about. You can try to eliminate some of those from your foods and see if your symptoms get better or not. So it may be like a trial and error method if we didn't want to do the test. But the point is that we need to be aware that there is such a thing as MSG, and when do we not see it on the food labels, and when would we actually see it on the food labels? So when we actually see it on the food labels, then now that it's actually pretty much filled with almost 99% full of MSG. So that's when we know. Other ways, so to kind of reduce that glutamate toxicity or that level in our bodies, would be to try some natural supplements. Curcumin is a really good supplement that helps to antagonize the toxic effects of glutathione if we have glutamate, if we have too much of it in our bodies. Another supplement that can be naturally used is called quercetin. So that can also be used for it. Green tea extracts can be used. And so these have actually showed some kind of results in helping us bring the glutathione, glutamate, why do I keep saying glutathione? Brings the glutamate toxic levels down. So hopefully that helped a little bit. And I'm happy to take some questions after you watch the replay. If you wanted to shoot me some questions, I'm happy to take a look at it more. If you're interested in running the test to see what your body's doing with that, definitely let me know about that as well, and I can help you get that set up as well. But just wanted to throw that out there. There's just some different neurotransmitters and cells that are also at play, and when it goes untreated or unlooked at for a lot of time, that's when we start to suspect these symptoms, and we can start to see worsening of our health. So hopefully, with this information, we're a little bit more uh, aware of what's going on around us, and we can take a better look at the labels that are on our food items. That's it. Thank you for joining us. Bye.